Hey, Truth Culture, welcome back. The podcast where we like unpacking the truth in our modern culture. My name is Cal.
And I'm Mike.
We're here today to talk about the age of the earth. We're talking about... That was terrible. Hey, so, Mike, I had something happen to me this past week that happens to me every year. And we celebrated. It was my birthday, right?
Oh,
and
happy birthday!
Thanks. You know, for my birthday, I was thinking about.
I feel bad. I didn't tell you happy birthday.
You didn't know. It's okay.
Bad friend.
It's okay. You didn't know. So I was thinking about what we were going to talk about on my birthday. I was thinking about the age of the earth, and so when my birthday came, I was thinking about how do I know the real age of me? You know, what proofs do I have out there? And so one of the things that I have that I thought about is my birth certificate. So a birth certificate is pretty good, although, you know, I'm pretty sure mistakes have ever been made on a birth certificate. But, you know, I've seen my birth certificate, and I'm pretty confident in it. And I also have people who were there at the time, lots of people who were there at the time who can vouch. So I am pretty confident that when this last birthday, I turned 33. I'm pretty sure of that. Something we don't have a birth certificate on.
You look a lot younger.
Something we don't have the birth certificate on is the Earth. We don't have there was no governing authority, I guess, issuing birth certificates at that time.
I agree.
Now we do have witnesses of that. Actually, 3 that are one. So it was God. So it's pretty good if you get an all-knowing creator that was there. Problem is, I guess. Obviously, did you watch Bill Nye and Ken Ham their debate this past?
I did not.
Last week. Shockingly, not everyone believes in this God we speak of.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Hold on. Sit down.
Yeah.
So there's some debate in the scientific culture, but did you know there's debate on the age of the Earth within the Christian culture?
As a matter of fact, I did, Cal.
What are the two? What are some of the main theories that you, as you're researching this, you came across?
Oh, there's what's called the day-age theory, the 6th literal day of creation theory. There is a sort of a structure theory. Then there's the evolutionary Darwinian theory. Add to it for me, Cal.
Yeah, there's the theistic evolution is another one that
well, that's a good one
that people talk about. That's not one that I think Christians should adopt. But we'll talk a little bit about that. I came across a couple of interesting ones too, and I think we'll probably focus on the main 2 here. But a couple other ones that I came across: the gap theory.
Oh, and the gap theory, yeah.
Which I had kind of been somewhat familiar with. And basically the gap theory is there is a gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, where in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and then there's this space where, and Willis Jennings Dake is the guy that first came up with this gap theory, from what I could tell, and he wrote a book about it and all that. And he thinks that during that time is when dinosaurs lived. That's when angels and demons. That's when you had the fall of the angels. The fall of Satan was all during this time. And then God sent a flood.
Right.
And then Genesis 1:2 picks up and says, "And darkness covered the face of the earth, face of the deep, and the earth was void without form." And so it's an interesting theory.
It's actually a theory that I actually held to for some time because of the Hebrew translation of Genesis 1 and 2, but I'm not so sure anymore.
Yeah,
leave it at that.
Yeah,
but
I'll
just recently, it was an interesting thing. It was something that was like, oh, this, depending on how you translate the word, could mean the earth became without form or void.
Right. That's part of what that argument hinges on. And there's a couple things in there, but not very many biblical scholars believe that today. I think there's probably a couple of them out there. I've always found it's kind of interesting when someone attacks your faith based on the age of the earth, when you can kind of throw that one out, because it sounds interesting. But I'm not sure that it's true, and I think we'll probably say that a few times today. I know I probably will, but
I'm not sure.
I'm not positive. Yeah,
remember, folks, layman terms.
Yeah. And
information gatherers, and we're presenting the whole argument as we see it from a layman's perspective.
Yeah, and honestly, a lot of the really bright, educated people that I read about this topic, they weren't really sure either. It seems like they were humble enough to admit that there is some room for Christians to disagree in this.
Right.
And Mike, we're all about truth and exposing truth. We're passionate about truth and all of that. But and there are some things, crucifixion, for instance. I think you have to believe it was really Jesus on the cross. You can't say that it was the Archangel Michael or something like that took his place.
Or Jesus didn't really live, or like some random, right, you can't do that.
Virgin birth, you need to believe that.
Right, none of that's real. You can't say that and be a Christian.
But I think, so those things, I think you have to be very firm about saying that, hey, this is absolutely what I believe. There are some things in the Bible to me like this where I don't think, my thought is, I don't think God intended to be extremely clear about how old the earth is. And some people might even believe that God says...
I disagree here.
Some people might even say that the Bible says that the earth is 6,000 years old. It does not, actually. It does not say... There was I don't know if he's an archbishop or who he was, somebody in the Catholic Church. I remember his name, though. His name was Usher. Yes, his name was Usher.
Father Usher.
Yeah. No, that was hilarious. But he is the one that went back and he counted up. Yeah. So a lot of records, that Usher. He's the one that went back and added up the days.
Right.
Adam and the next and the next and the next and that stuff and all on and on. And he's the one that came up with, okay, based on looking at this, the Earth is 6,000 years old. Now there are problems with that, but that's where most Christians get that from. It's not because the Bible says, hey, in 4000 BC, the heavens and the earth were created. It doesn't say that. But you say, oh, wait, so this is interesting. So
go ahead.
You think, I'm going to ask you.
Yes.
I think that this is something that the Bible is not explicit about. I think this is something that the Bible leaves somewhat room for debate on. The truth is the truth, but I'm not sure the Bible teaches 100% that the earth is either young or old. You think different?
I do think different.
Okay.
I think it's, well, let me back up. Okay. Let's go through each one and say a little bit about each one, and then we will share with our audience what each of us thinks.
Okay, awesome. So let's start with the young Earth view. Okay.
Okay, gotcha.
So I'm just going to put up a couple of bullet points about the young Earth view. Basically, the young Earth view, each day of creation is a literal 24-hour day. There's no gap in 1-1 and 1-2.
Right.
And each day is a literal 24-hour day.
Right.
So no issues with that from you.
No, except when you realize that the sun was created on day 4.
Right?
That might present an issue. But it says the earth was created in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. So what are you to do with that?
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that?
And let's be clear, when you say there might be an issue, you're not saying, hey, there might be an issue with the truthfulness of Scripture.
Right.
You're saying there may be an issue with believing that it's a 24-hour day.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And
I'm talking vagueness until I get to the end.
And I think maybe it is important to give a little public service announcement here of sometimes there are things that maybe you don't fully understand in the Bible that you just have to say, you know what, I don't fully get it. It doesn't really matter whether the earth is 5 billion years old or 6,000.
Well, wait. Hold on. Because now I'm thinking.
Well, in other words, I don't think anybody's losing their salvation.
No, right.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Ultimately, it doesn't ultimately matter. And sometimes you have to say, okay, I'm just whatever. I believe the Bible's true. I believe God's truthful.
Right, and at the time,
on this issue, I'm not sure.
Right, I don't have the tools right now to understand possibly what's going on. I will say this, that this is very interesting to me. The Hebrew rabbis in ancient times, and even up until today, they call this a remez. when there's an apparent contradiction in terms, it means it's a hint of something deeper. And so you have to dig and dig and dig if you want to understand what's happening. We're both digging.
Yeah. Now, so the literal 24-hour day, what some people would say about, first of all, they would say the word yom, the Hebrew word,
Which is
for day.
Always attached to a number.
Yom, well, anyway. So the Hebrew word, sometimes it's used for days, sometimes it's used for periods of time. Without getting into, I guess, specifics in Hebrews, but there is, based on just the Hebrew word itself, it's used many times throughout the Old Testament, and the word has been used to be a specific 24-hour day, and it has been used for periods of time.
I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in your theory here.
Well, I don't want to get too much into the Hebrew, but I guess that's kind of a basic. So as someone who believes in young Earth, they would believe that dinosaurs and humans lived on the Earth together.
Right.
So, since, hey, no problem, they were born, they were all created about the same time, so they would have had to live on the Earth about the same time. They also would have to say that the original creation must have had an appearance of age. So here's an interesting, and this is...
Explain that.
Okay, well here's a philosophical question. When Adam and Eve were created on day 6, and they woke up, did they see stars in the sky?
Right.
And if they did, we know those stars are X number of years old.
Right.
Because we don't see the light until, obviously light travels at the speed of light.
Right.
And we can measure how fast that is and how long it takes for light to get somewhere to us.
I'm happy you're bringing this up now. It happens to be 186,000 miles a second right now.
There you go.
It's predicted that it was faster, and speed of light is apparently slowing down.
Yeah, I'm not as convinced about that. That's really technical scientific stuff.
Right.
Probably not for us to get into now. But anyway, not everybody agrees on that. I'll just say, not everybody agrees about that fact. So anyway, so we know that stars that we see in the sky now, they are somewhere between 4.5 to even up to 13 to 14 billion years old.
Agreed.
Because it would have taken that long. Right. For the light to get to us. So, but the question is, if they did see stars in the sky on the first day they were created, then it is possible, okay, God created this whole heavens and earth to have an appearance of age.
Right.
So there's a couple of other things about that. One, Adam and Eve were probably, when they were created as babies. They were created, 25. And you say, hey, that looks like about a 25-year-old man.
Yeah.
You say, no, actually he was born yesterday.
Yeah.
So there's, hey, that looks like a 1-year-old rabbit. And no, he was born yesterday.
Why a rabbit?
I don't know. And, there's trees and all that.
Right.
If you cut open the tree, you would see the rings, and it would count to say, hey, this is about a 30-year-old tree.
So it looks like the Earth is created with age.
Yeah, so that is one of the things that, certainly, because I don't think you can say, 6,000 is a number I've heard, but even 10 or 20,000 years old, I don't think you can say that and say that the Earth appears to be that age too.
Right. I've heard many different opinions on this, and truthfully, once you hear the opinions, if you really want to have somewhat closer to the truth, if you want to know about math, you should probably ask a mathematician,
right.
That sort of thing, and not listen to a grocery store salesman or something.
Right.
So like it would become closer to the truth if you have somebody that's more informed about why it could be billions of years old.
Right. Now, one of the things I guess also that a lot of young Earth advocates would say is what helped the production of things like coal, diamonds.
Right.
Those things, we know how long those things take.
Right.
To be created. We can measure that, observable, and do the math and all of that. We know that those take millions of years.
Right.
But something that they'll point to is the extraordinary pressure put on those by the flood.
Right.
The flood is a big part of why things are dated the way that they are. According to someone who has a young Earth view, and certainly that would have a big impact.
Yeah.
No doubt. Water is all over the whole face of the Earth. That's going to have a big impact on the Earth. It's not going to age the same as we could observe it today. And I guess that's a basic overview. The one issue I think I have with young Earth, and like I've said, I'm not 100% positive, but have questions. I ask questions. I ask
Oh, yeah.
why a lot.
You need to.
One of the problems I have with it being a very young Earth, and I have no problem with God setting it up to look older
right.
than it is, because you certainly have to say it appears older.
Yeah.
I have no problem with God doing that. I don't think God's being deceptive or anything like that.
Right.
The one thing I have an issue with though is fossils.
Okay.
Why go put all these bones in the ground just to give it an appearance of looking older? So that's kind of one question about that I have.
Which would segue into the Earth is
right. So the other thing is there's an old Earth view. I think we said this, but this is something Bible-believing Christians take on both. Universities allow either one to teach. Most universities allow either one of those views to hold positions at their university.
Or at least they teach the controversy.
Yeah. So an old Earth view, in its basic sense, each day of creation is a long period of time and not a literal 24-hour day.
Right. It's kind of like an age.
Right.
Age of the Earth. So the first day would be age 1.
Yes.
And they put it in form of 24-hour days so they could understand each minute is equal to so many thousands of years or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and probably millions of years.
Right. This view contends that the Earth is about 15.3 billion years old.
Right. So then some people will say then dinosaurs became extinct before the end of day 6. And I want to talk about on day 6 a little bit. Day 6 is pretty critical. And one of the things that an old Earth advocate would say, all the things that had to happen on day 6 make it pretty hard to believe that it was a literal 24-hour day. Because on day 6, God created Adam.
Right.
And Adam named every animal out there. Right. So God took him and
took him a long time.
Yeah, and he didn't just assign a random generated name like like on the internet where you just randomly generate a
Lion
user ID or something. Right. There was observing done of the animals, and he named them with something based on like he did with Eve. It was something observable about the person, about the animal, excuse me. And then God realized there's not a suitable helpmate for Adam, and then he put Adam to sleep, and then he woke him up, and he created Eve. And
folks, that means he woke up married.
right. So anyway, so that's something somebody in the older Earth would say.
Pretty funny.
Yeah. I never thought about it like that. Never mind. We could get way off track there.
Too much to cover for the rabbit trail this morning.
An older Earth advocate would say, obviously that's going to be a long period of time, and by that time, dinosaurs became extinct. But there are others that say that they were still alive. The dinosaur issue, even on the old Earth, they aren't sure when they.
The old Earth view really lends itself to, I guess I should say, people equate it with a Darwinian evolutionary position. In other words, it's 15 billion years old. We must have evolved. So then that opens another whole can of worms.
Right. Yeah, and just to clarify, an old Earth view does not necessarily mean that you believe in evolution.
Right. You can equate it.
Right. You just think that a lot of things happened. God made the Earth. He created. It wasn't random. It wasn't a big bang. All this stuff. Creation happened, and then it was. But they would say it wasn't until about and you can argue about the numbers, but 10 to 20,000 years ago that God created man. And I do think it's important to believe that Adam and Eve were not mythical creatures. They were not stories or fables.
They were people,
literal real people. And the Bible does. The times that it mentions Adam, even in the New Testament, it mentions him as, it doesn't talk about him as a fictional character.
Yeah, actually, as a side note to that, anytime the Bible mentions a name, that is a story. Anytime it mentions a person without a name, that's a parable. That's a fictional story.
That's interesting. Now, one of the things that, I guess a convenience about the old Earth view is that it doesn't contradict with science. So it allows for agreement with the scientific community. And I think that is something that does make Christians nervous a lot of times, because we've been fed this line that science and God are at odds, and there is a battle between science and God. Whereas I don't agree with that at all.
We agree.
Yeah, I think science should be celebrated because science is only determining the universe and the earth that God set up and He created.
It's the other side of a coin, so to speak.
Was it the same coin? It's God created the earth. It's,
you don't have heads of one and tails on a different coin.
So I think that is something to keep in mind that science and
we're going to come back to this at the end.
Science and God are not.
They are not diametrically opposed.
Yeah, they're not at war. So I don't think as Christians we should be scared of biology or science or anything like that. I think that once all texts are correctly understood, it will confirm. The Bible is going to be confirmed. I'm not in any way, shape, or form worried about the truthfulness of the Bible when it comes to people saying how old the Earth is.
Right.
I
agree.
Yeah, but and I'll say this: I probably lean more towards an older Earth. I probably lean towards that, but. Just to be clear, it's not because I think science and the scientific evidence is overwhelming or I want to agree with, or it's not because I think that a young earth view is crazy. Just being a Christian, I believe plenty of crazy things.
Right.
I believe that a man died on the cross 2,000 years ago, therefore I get to go to heaven.
Right. Yeah, I believe people found coins in fishes' mouths and they were swallowed by whales.
Yeah, I believe there was a literal man swallowed by a whale and spit out on the earth.
Apparitions and all kind of stuff.
Yes.
It is the guidebook to the supernatural, so to speak.
Yeah. I also believe Adam lived 930 years. I don't understand.
I believe that too.
But so that's the same character. So I believe that he lived 930 years. But I do have a hard time with 6 literal days. I think I think I have a little bit of a harder time with 6 literal days. And maybe there's just some. The point is, it's not because I'm afraid of believing something that's crazy.
Right. It's just like the proof or the evidence seems to suggest otherwise.
Yes. In its basic sense, that's kind of young Earth and old Earth. One other point I do want to mention in here is Hebrew genealogy. It is very common to skip whole generations and multiple generations when you're doing a genealogy. You look at the way Matthew did it, the way some of the other New Testament authors did it. One of them mentions David, the son of Joseph, which there's a lot of room in between there. So I don't know that you're getting from.
Let me clarify that because they don't have a word for grandfather. Or They don't have a word for. It's not that it's intentionally skipped to leave out things.
Right.
It's just that. Hebrew didn't have a word for grandpa or great-grandpa or great-great-great-grandpa or whatever. So they spoke of their forefathers as their father.
Yeah.
So
let's be honest.
Just to clarify.
Let's be honest. Not everybody in my family tree deserves mention. Let's just be honest.
13 greats up.
Yeah. If I were to write about it, there was some I'd probably
great 10 to the power of the 13 or whatever.
Right. No, they're not intentionally. That's a good point. They're not intentionally skipping things for but maybe for time's sake or space sake or whatever it is.
My great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa.
Yeah, because they would say, hey, I'll lay down to rest with my fathers.
Yeah. My forefathers.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Okay, so that's kind of the overview. Is there anything you want to hit on there?
Well, I'm so happy you asked. Paradigm shift here for me in the last couple of days, and not because we were preparing to do this podcast today. Total paradigm shift. I'm a big YouTuber. So I watch a lot of lectures. I gather a lot of information from lectures that are posted from both a Christian side, an atheistic side, an evolutionary side, and all facets in between. I came across something that reconciles both. And I was blown away. I was totally blown away.
Okay.
Totally blown away. Okay, you ready for this, right?
I've never heard this. So this is the first time I've ever heard Mike tell me.
And I purposely hid it from Cal. I actually only got it through my brain yesterday. And so this person, he's got a doctorate from MIT in both earth sciences, nuclear physics, and he's for lack of a better term, a Hebraic scholar. So he lives in Israel, and he teaches Hebrew, and he teaches Genesis, the whole spectrum. So He said there is no contradiction between the Bible and science. And just like we touched on before, it's another side of the same coin. Science came from the same God that the creation did. The Bible does not contradict itself. So now he goes on to explain physically in physics, and because he understands that. Now I must say this, but I now tend to think that there was a Big Bang, but not in the sense that you think. Because what happens is science brings the Earth and everything back to this Big Bang, which came from what's called the singularity. The singularity is a fancy word for me, which means I don't know where it came from.
Yeah.
If you ask Richard Dawkins or Stephen Hawking or one of these atheist evolutionary people, they're like, well, we don't know. Nobody knows how it started. Well, yeah, that's singularity.
The basis of most things with evolution is randomness. That's a very big part of that.
So he traces this back all the way to the very beginning. We were planets, which was plasma, which was stardust first, then he brings in biblically that it was God who was the singularity. The creation was actually everything packed into this little bitty tiny speck that begins to expand. But it didn't expand as matter. It was light beams, high energized light beams is what he talks about. And this is a brilliant Hebrew physics mind that's reconciling now this thing. So I was blown away. And he said what God actually did was create the processes of gravity and force, velocity, time. Time was created then, because if we believe God is outside of time, God had to create time at some point. And so really where he starts is, what's your perspective? Which way are you looking? If you're looking for in your God, and you're looking forward in time, because that's where the Bible starts. Day one, absolute first. First day is relative to if there's a second day. So it's day one. The second day is called second day. So this is how he explains it. If you're God, and you're looking forward in time, and you say it's 6 days that I created the earth, and 7 days I rested. Okay, I believe that. Now, we look back in time and we see 15.3 billion years. How do you reconcile that? 6 days to 15.3 billion years. So this is what he says. God's got a laser. Okay, we're going to call it a laser. And he's going to, this sounds so simplistic as it comes out of my mouth.
God has a laser. Okay.
God's got a laser.
Here we go.
And he's going to, and now he's starting, there's no time yet. He creates time and he does this. He goes, and he does that 6 times. And imprinted
like
on he's got a laser.
Sound like.
Right. And imprinted on that laser, which is light, is information. And we know we can do that now. That's fiber optics and that sort of thing. Okay? So I'm qualifying all this as I go. I'm going to give you this guy's name so you guys can go look at it and read it. And this is where it gets very interesting. Einstein's theory of relativity. E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times light squared. Okay, so the universe is created as energized beams of light, and God creates all the processes and everything. He also creates gravity, and it has been discovered that, and this is just a little bit scientific, so stay with me. It's been discovered that gravity and the expansion of the universe actually has an effect on time. It slows down and doubles time. And light and the information encoded on that light actually doubles with it. So God creates the earth in 6 days. So let's say you got 6 beams of light. The universe begins to double. It doubles in the beginning a lot quicker than it would toward the end. He does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with his imaginary laser. By the time it gets to you, the universe has doubled. We're looking back in time. That's 15 billion years. That's why it says, this man brings this up, Psalm 90, verse 4, for 1,000 years in your sight is like a day that passes. But that is not the interesting thing. Genesis 2:4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth in the day, Yom, that God made them.
Yeah.
So how do you have generations in a day?
Yeah.
Genesis 5 says this is the book of the generations of Adam in the day that God created Adam. How do you have generations within a day?
Yeah.
This is a paradigm shift because God meant it for your clock to understand it was 6 24-hour literal days. And it began to double and expand. But in that 24-hour time period of each day contained the ages of the earth. That's why they could look back and say 24-hour days. It came better.
Yeah. So
It gets better.
It's better than that?
It gets better.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say this, okay? So now they can measure how the universe doubles, and they can measure how light doubles, and by that you can measure the age of the Earth. Ironically enough, now this is where I was like, okay, I got it. This is cool. The Earth is 15 billion years old, right?
Okay.
Okay, gotcha.
Hang
with me.
According to some, yes.
15.3, 14 billion, whatever. You divide 15 billion by 1 million, which is the time is dilated. That equals 0.015. Now, you multiply it by 365 days a year, and that comes out to approximately 6 days. Very interesting, huh?
Yeah.
So in other words, we can divide it back by the doubling and expansion of the universe from our perspective, because now we understand the ratio, and apparently this is well documented in scientific textbooks.
Yeah.
Right.
Obviously,
Cal's looking at me with a raised eyebrow here. So that's a paradigm shift.
Well, here's my raise. Tell me the takeaway for the average person listening.
Space-time stretches. Space-time stretches. Takeaway here is it depends on your perspective of where you're looking. If you're looking forward in time, it's 6 days. But you said yourself, light travels at 186,000 miles a second. So if I said, well, I created this, I shot out 6 light beams that had information on it at 186,000 miles a second, but it didn't get to you until then. So does that mean that it's 15.3 billion years old because it didn't get to me then? Because we're looking at stars that didn't really get to us until, I don't know, whenever. So...
Yeah, they're still getting to us. Yeah.
They're still getting to us. It depends on your perspective.
Yeah. So obviously nobody in the scientific community really adopts that.
Right.
But I guess the main takeaway is there's a few ways to look at this, and we're still getting data and facts in. Nothing is definitive, and I wanted to read this. This is as kind of a conclusion. This is somebody I read, talks to, writes systematic theology books. Anyway, so he says, how old is the Earth then? Where does this discussion leave us? There's a theologian, Davis Young. His arguments for an old Earth, based on many kinds of scientific data from different disciplines, seem, to the present writer at least, to be very strong. Although our conclusions are tentative at this point in our understanding, Scripture seems to be more easily understood to suggest but not require a young Earth view, while the observable facts of creation seem increasingly to favor an old Earth view. Both are very possible, but neither one is certain. Given the situation, it would seem best to, 1, admit that God may not allow us to find a clear solution to this question before Christ returns.
Right.
That's possible. There are lots of things out there like that. This isn't the only thing like that. And 2, to encourage evangelical scientists and theologians who fall in both the young Earth and old Earth camps to begin to work together with much less arrogance, much more humility, and much more greater sense of cooperation in a common purpose. Progress will certainly be made if old Earth and young Earth scientists who are Christians will be more willing to talk to each other without hostility. Or in highly emotional accusations on the one hand, and without a spirit of condescension or academic pride on the other. These attitudes are not becoming of the body of Christ. And I think that's a good takeaway for us as well. It is good to come up with maybe you fall on one side, maybe I fall on another, and that's good to think through that, but have the maturity to be able to say, but they don't understand everything.
Right.
And so I think that's a good reminder to us to not get all arrogant and in our view and say this is absolutely the way it is.
Yeah, because the basic plain fact of the matter is we're here now. We weren't there in the 6 days / expansion of the universe / whatever else. And we're here now, and what matters is that we follow Christ now. Just one other thing before we wrap up and close. If you're interested in looking up the 6 days / expansion / thing that I just talked about, you can look up Gerald Schroeder, was his name, online on YouTube. He's got lectures and all sorts of things. Very, very interesting. His website is geraldschroeder.com, GeraldSchroeder.com. So,
and I think too there are plenty of Ravi Zacharias is another one that's out there. Wayne Grudem is the guy that I mentioned. There are plenty of Christian apologists who are also very brilliant
Yeah.
when it comes to science. And I think anytime I have listened to them talk, they hold their own. There's something called the Veritas Forum. And that is where Christians go to universities like Harvard or higher learning places, and they just have a talk about creation, about the more challenging and difficult, and they present it from a Christian perspective. It's very good. If you get a chance, look up Veritas. And you got anything else?
I don't. Just don't believe us. Go do your own research. Pray. Let the Holy Spirit lead you.
All right, well, that is two layman theologians' view of the age of the earth. As Mike said, make sure you go. And if nothing else, what we hope that we do with this podcast is we encourage you to go out there and look up things that interest you. This isn't too big for you. This isn't, if we can look this stuff up and start to form opinions and understand it to some degree, so can you.
Right.
And I'm the middle manager in a corporation. Mike owns a dance studio.
Yeah.
We're not pastors or theologians, but hey, all of us have been called to defend our faith. So we want there to be a truth culture among Christians.
That's a good wrap up.
That's why we're truth culture. I'm Cal.
I'm Mike. See you later, folks.
Peace out.